So yeah, I've done a couple of reviews so far of the DC animated universe. In fact, I found out that in the first video, I actually left a movie out. like like I recorded it, but for some reason it got taken out during the edit. So I don't know what happened. I must have deleted it by accident. I'll release that at some point. I mean it's not that big of a deal, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, I thought yeah, it's a good time to get back into this. Do I guess part 3 of however many. So let's get into it. Again, very briefly, I got a really good deal on the DC animated universe kind of bundle from iTunes, 30 movies for $7.99. So yeah, I definitely just said, "Hey, let's look at these, you know. I've heard about them from many different people over the years and I just never watched them. So it's been really fun digging into these and really kind of seeing the progression and in some cases how good some of them are and then how bad some of them are, but we'll get to those. We'll get to those. So anyway, this is part 3, and if you want to watch part 1 and 2, they're available on the channel. In fact, I think I'm going to do a playlist for these because, I think that if there's more than 2, which is probably going to be at least 5 or 6, maybe 7, 8, I don't know. I'll do a playlist. How's that? Now, first up on this group is Justice League Doom. And this one was I really like this one. I really like this one a lot. Basically, a bad guy gets a hold of a bunch of ways to defeat the members of the Justice League, and he has stolen them from Batman. So Batman, I guess it was one of those things where I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's going on in the story, and this is not like, I mean, I guess that's a spoiler. I don't know, but the idea that Batman would be the guy that would know everybody's weaknesses and have already thought way ahead to say, you know what, I need to figure out how to defeat each one of them because if any of them go bad, I need to be prepared. I love that, and it's the main reason why I like this one so much. In fact, the original writer was Dwayne McDuffie, and I'd never heard of him before. And there's a really really good, again, this is not available on HBO Max, so it's kind of or Max. I keep doing it, but there's a special feature about Dwayne McDuffie, the writer, and his early demise, actually, and just some of the stories from that, and it just made me want to read everything Dwayne McDuffie ever did. It's really really good stuff, and I think Cyborg is a really big component of this story, which I really liked. I really like this one. I think overall, I think this one's probably, it's definitely in the top third. I'd have to kind of watch them all again to kind of figure out which ones are my favorite, but this one's really, really good. Now, next up on the list is Superman versus the Elite. And this one was interesting because it's basically forcing Superman to defend his moral code, you know? And because there's this new group of superheroes that are getting a lot done, but they're doing it in ways that Superman wouldn't. And it's an interesting kind of look at the character of Superman, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed that part of it. But overall, I felt like the whole movie was kind of like, okay, cool. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just it didn't have that major like hit, and maybe it's because I've never been like the biggest fan of Superman. Um, I think the most interesting stories about Superman are just like this, where he's got to figure out how to do this within his code, to defeat his enemies while maintaining this strict code, and I think that's interesting. But overall, I was still kind of left with a meh. Now, next up on the list, we're going to talk about I guess the next two, but at least on a lot of the lists, because they split this story into 2 parts. The problem is that's not how I read it, and that's not how I watched it. The version that I got was put together. So we're talking about The Dark Knight Returns. Yes, this is my original copy from way back in the day. I mean, it has been through the ringer. It's been wet. It's I mean, yeah, there's like this. It's like a big stain in the middle. I mean, seriously, this has been around in my possession for a very 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 long time. But I love this story. It's great, and it's one of those that kind of got me really into comics. Was this story, and so yeah, seeing it here, there was I know there's going to be some people that will look at the comic versus the animated, and they'll say, they should have done this, they should have done that. I really enjoyed it. From a person who's, you know, I guess a lot of my journey when it came to collecting comics, graphic novels, whatever you want to call them, started with this one. It was really fun to watch, and I really really enjoy it. There's so much in this story, and the idea of an aged Batman, it's a really cool story. And what's even more interesting about it is that, this is a classic, but DC's moved on from this, and what they've done is that they keep referencing it, even though in this version of the canon, I guess, I don't want to go into spoilers too much, but there are things that have happened that he does this version of Bruce Wayne doesn't know about and doesn't care about, or doesn't. Things are different. This is basically a an established canon of what would happen in the future based on where Batman was at that point in the mid 80s. You know what I mean? So it was kind of interesting to see that, and to see it again now that I've been watching some of these other comics, or these other animated series, or animated movies, I should say. It's been really fun to watch these, but this was kind of like, okay, I can see why people really like these. This one was really really well done, and it made me look forward to another one that's down the list, and well, we'll get to that one probably in another video. Now the next one is Superman Unbound, and this is of course a Superman story, but it deals with Brainiac, it deals with Supergirl, it deals with Kandor, and man, this is out there. This is a story that I feel like I'm just not a huge fan of. I like the character of Brainiac, but I kind of hope that Brainiac makes a return that makes a little more. I was gonna say makes a little more sense. It makes sense. The story makes sense. It's not like it. You can't follow what's going on. It's just cheesy. There's just a lot of cheese. Oh, a shrunk down portion of Krypton still exists, and it's goofy. It's goofy to me. But the character of Brainiac is really really interesting. So I hope that there's a way to bring that into, and maybe this is something James Gunn will do, to bring Brainiac into modern times without the cheese factor. I don't know. I don't know if that's ever going to be a thing. But for me personally, I'm just not a huge fan of the cheese part, the cheesy stuff. I actually like the character of Supergirl though. I really enjoy watching her stories. I've just been really taken with her. You know what I mean? She's awesome. Now next up is another big one. Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. Now this one is of course based on the comic series, or the arc, I guess. I'd never read that arc, and of course I'd seen the current Flash movie. I say current, the one that came out with Ezra Miller, and Michael Keaton, and all that stuff. That's very different than this. So for me, this was my first glimpse at the original idea of the Flashpoint Paradox, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it a lot. I feel like it's a weird thing because execution is always important to me to get the story across. I mean, the story can be good, but the execution has to be there. I feel like the Ezra Miller version of the Flashpoint story, it was executed pretty well. Even though there were problems, there were definitely problems in that movie for sure. But this, I feel like the story was so much better. The story really hit, and I really enjoyed watching this. But again, this it feels the animation at times, and I'm talking about across the board. It feels very budget looking, and it's I don't know. I'm not saying they're being lazy. I'm just saying that it just doesn't feel premium. If that makes any sense. A story like this deserved that premium feel to it. And I just don't feel like in a lot of ways they hit that. That's just how I look at it. But the story is fantastic and I really, really enjoyed it. Now, of course, the Flashpoint paradox sort of started a new continuity within the DC animated universe. So the next movie on the list is Justice League War, which is kind of starting over with this new continuity and this new version of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all that kind of stuff. And I like this. It's cool. I like the story. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the redesigns of the characters. Superman in particular, I'm just not a fan of that look. Now, this was based on Jim Lee's comic, right? And I love Jim Lee. I've lived Jim Lee for years and years and years. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of these new redesigns. So it's interesting to see the older ones versus the newer ones. To see this, I guess, this new version. So I guess it'll remain to be seen what I think of the other ones. But this one it's an interesting start, but it was like, okay, all right, cool. Now I feel like this video's already gotten too long, so I think we're gonna stop it here. That's 6 movies, 6 more movies in the DC animated universe thing, and I'm again, even though I have nitpicks, even though there are problems, in my opinion, I wish that they spent a little more money on the animation side of it, a little more time in the animation to make it, to make the, to give the stories the room to breathe and to be what they are in the best way possible. You know what I mean? Like almost like, hey, this is just not another version of it. This is like the absolute best version of this story that we could do. And I kind of wish they would do that, but they haven't so far. I mean, there's some of them that are pretty good, but I still feel like there's room for improvement on almost all of these. But anyway, I'm interested in your thoughts. Have you seen any of these, and what did you think about them? Let's talk about them down in the comment section because that's always fun. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.